some of it's in the cafeteria still.
So I need the keys.
Mm-hmm.
And between before service,
Just put your stuff in. All right.
I had to go to work and stuff.
Well, yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
I think it's locked in at a certain number. But that's a big size bill.
And then,
Good morning, Shabbat Shalom. All right. Today's Torah portion is a big one. It's the portions of Chukat and Balak together. Let's go ahead and start with a blessing. Blessed are you, Yehovah our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with his commandments and has commanded us to engross ourselves in the words of Torah. Please, Yehovah our God, sweeten the words of Torah in our mouth and in the mouth of your people, the family of Israel. May we and our offspring and the offspring of your people, the house of Israel, all of us, know your name and study your Torah for its own sake. Blessed are you, Yehovah, who teaches Torah to his people Israel. Amen. We're going to start off in Numbers chapter 19. Can I get a volunteer to read chapter 19, please? Yeah, Stevie?
Testing, testing. Adonai said to Moshe and Aaron, "This is the regulation from the Torah, which Adonai has commanded. Tell the people of Israel to bring you a young red female cow without fault or defect, and which has never borne a yoke. You are to give it to Eleazar the Kohen. It is to be brought outside the camp and slaughtered in front of him. Eleazar the Kohen is to take some of its blood with his finger and sprinkle this blood toward the front of the tent of meeting 7 times. The heifer is to be burned to ashes before his eyes. Its skin, meat, blood, and dung is to be burned to ashes. The Kohen is to take cedar wood, hyssop, and scarlet yarn, and throw them onto the heifer as it is burning up. Then the Kohen is to wash his clothes and himself in water, after which he may re-enter the camp, but the Kohen will remain unclean until evening. The person who burned up the heifer is to wash his clothes and himself in water, but he will remain unclean until evening. A man who is clean is to collect the ashes of the heifer and store them outside the camp in a clean place. They are to be kept for the community of the people of Israel to prepare water for purification from sin. The one who collected the ashes of the heifer is to wash his clothes and be unclean until evening. For the people of Israel and for the foreigner staying with them, this will be a permanent regulation. Anyone who touches a corpse, no matter whose dead body it is, will be unclean for 7 days. He must purify himself with these ashes on the 3rd and 7th day. Then he will be clean. But if he does not purify himself the 3rd and 7th days, he will not be clean. Anyone who touches a corpse, no matter whose dead body it is, and does not purify himself, has defiled the tabernacle of Adonai. That person will be cut off from Israel. Yet the water for purification, because the water for purification was not sprinkled on him, he will be unclean, and his uncleanness is still on him. This is the law. When a person dies in a tent, everyone who enters the tent and everything in the tent will be unclean for 7 days. Every open container without a cover, closely attached, is unclean. Also, whoever is in an open field and touches a corpse, whether of someone killed by a weapon or of someone who died naturally, or the bone of a person or a grave, will be unclean for 7 days. For the unclean person, they are to take some of the ashes of the animal burned up as a purification from sin and add them to fresh water in a container. A clean person is to take a bunch of hyssop leaves, dip it in the water, and sprinkle it on the tent, on all the containers, on the people who were there, and on the person who touched the bone or the person killed, or the one who died naturally, or the grave. The clean person will sprinkle the unclean person on the 3rd and 7th days. On the 7th day, he will purify him. Then he will wash his clothes and himself in water, and he will be clean at evening. The person who remains unclean and does not purify himself will be cut off from the community because he has defiled the sanctuary of Adonai. The water for purification has not been sprinkled on him. He is unclean. This is to be a permanent regulation for them. The person who sprinkles the water for purification is to wash his clothes. Whoever touches the water for purification will be unclean until evening. Anything the unclean person touches will be unclean, and anyone who touches him will be unclean until evening.
All right, thank you, Stevie. This whole reading on the red heifer, the sages say this is a chukat type of ordinance or a statute, and the sages say that this is or they define this by saying it is beyond the comprehension of man. So with that, let's try to comprehend it.
Yeah, I'll make a little comment here since it's convenient, right?
Yes.
Of course, the title, as you point out, of this parasha is Chukat, which is decree. And we also have another word, which is called mishpatim, which is judgments. Mm-hmm. And there are distinguishing characteristics between, even though they fall under the Torah, and they are Torah laws and regulations, there's a distinction between Kukim and Mishpatim.
Yes.
And some may have heard me say this before because it was something from Eddie Chumney. And he was saying that Kukim are decrees from God. So basically, it relates directly to our relationship to God. And in this case, we can see this. And this is probably the one command that is least understood. And we acknowledge that. How can you make these connections? But the sages say it's because we are to know that God decrees it, and that's That's a real test for us to accept, regardless of whether we understand the wisdom that's behind it. It's beyond us, and that's part of the purpose there. It's so clear in that way. Now, mishpatim, on the other hand, relates to relationships with others, judgments, right? So we kind of have this vertical relationship, and then there's the horizontal one, right? And so, but the point that Eddie was making was that when people decide that someone is outside of their fellowship, and that they are therefore free to treat them any way they like, any way they want to, because they don't, from their point of view, they don't follow under relationship with Elohim, the Kokim. So, but he said you still know how to treat people, and that's how you're supposed to treat them. You cannot use Kokim as an excuse not to treat people properly and right. So I thought it was a good point, a good contrast.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, so the institution of this the red heifer here brings some interesting aspects into future prophecies that I want to kind of highlight. Notice in verse 13 that this whole ceremony of cleansing an individual that became unclean through a dead body, in verse 13 it says that the tabernacle of Yahweh be not defiled. Let's see, let me read it. Whosoever touch, I'm in verse 13, the dead body of any man that is dead and purifieth not himself, defileth the tabernacle of Yahweh. So this whole process, the purpose was to make sure that the tabernacle, which is where God dwelled in the midst of Israel, the only way he could dwell there was provide a system of purity and holiness. And so the ashes of red heifer is connected to the tabernacle, the purification of any person entering the tabernacle. Now I want to take you to Ezekiel 36, which is future prophecy. Starting in verse 32, it says, Therefore say to the house of Israel, this is what the sovereign Yahweh says. It is not for your sake that I am about to act, O house of Israel, but for the sake of my holy reputation, which you profaned among the nations where you went. I will magnify my great name that has been profaned among the nations, that you have profaned among them. The nations will know that I am Yahweh, declares the sovereign Yahweh, when I magnify myself among you in their sight. I will take you from the nations and gather you from all countries. Then I will bring you to the land. This is what we label the greater Exodus. And I will sprinkle you with pure water. And you will be clean from all your impurities. I will purify you from all your idols. This is in reference, I believe, to the water from the ashes of the red heifer. Okay, and he says, I will give you a new heart. I will put a new spirit in you and remove the heart of stone from your body and give you a heart of flesh. I will put my spirit within you. I will take the initiative, and you will obey my statutes and carefully observe my regulations, that you will live in the land that I gave to your fathers. You will be my people, and I will be your God, and I will save you from all your uncleanness. And so we see here that, again, that the ashes of the red heifer and the sprinkling of the water is connected to making sure the tabernacle, the place where God dwells, is not defiled. And this is going into the millennial kingdom prophecy here in Ezekiel. That's why the tabernacle, his temple, will be reset up, so people can approach him, approach his holiness, his place of dwelling in an unclean state. Not only the physical impurity or ritual impurity, but also with a clean heart, a moral purity.
Yeah. Ray? And then John after Ray?
Yeah, after studying with Torah Club on the end of days,
these things pop out at me is that on the third and seventh day, if he's supposed to be sprinkled on the third and seventh, which speaks of the resurrection on the third day, and then on the seventh day, the end of the millennial kingdom, of which we will receive a new heaven and a new earth. And so, we have to, and also then there's one more connection is that Paul said that, do you not know that you are the temple of the Holy Spirit? So if we're not cleansed, we've defiled the temple, which is our temple. We need to be cleansed by Yeshua, and I think that he's also a representative of the red heifer, or the red heifer is a representative of him.
John?
There are three similarities with the life and sacrifice of Christ to the red heifer. One is the moral perfection of Christ. The red heifer had to be an animal with no blemish, meaning it was perfect. Christ in John 8:46 turned to his accusers in the temple and asked them or challenged them and said, "Which one of you accuses me of sin?" And no one could do that. So that's the first similarity, the moral perfection of Christ. Secondly, this red heifer is the only sacrifice burned outside the camp. All others were burned at the temple or tabernacle. Christ, when he died on the cross, he died outside the walls of Jerusalem, within sight of the walls, but not within them. That's the second comparison. The third is the contact with the dead. Christ cleanses us from the contact we all will have with death. And so, in cleansing the red heifer, as in cleansing with contact with the dead body, it signifies the salvation from sin. And third, in verse 13, thank you, Mike, for mentioning that. I had not recognized it until you read it. Verse 13 signified that if anyone would not use the red heifer as the solution for sin, they would be cut off. This cutting off, I think, signifies the fact that anyone who does not avail themselves of the free offer of forgiveness accomplished by the death of Christ will be cut off from life and permanently excluded from salvation and live the rest of their life in darkness and in pain, unfortunately.
All right, thank you, John. Did we have another? We got another one up here.
Maybe this is a bit of an elementary question. I just immediately don't understand. Matthews just told me they might have diluted the water, just the more that they used it. But I was just like, it doesn't really make sense to me how you use one red heifer's amount of ashes for probably thousands of people. Just like sprinkling it on thousands of people. How do you have enough? But Matthias, like he said, it might have been diluted continuously. But I don't know. That wasn't. It's not immediately satisfying to my curiosity. Um, and I was just like, well, how do they make that happen? And then I, just kind of thinking about this and the connection to the Messiah. Uh, I don't know. Maybe there's something there illustrative about the miraculous work or something. I don't know where that might lead, but if it does lead anywhere, but I thought that was interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just thinking about where that might go.
That's a great question. And I don't know that I have an answer to that, other than if you burn all of it, there's going to be a lot of ash. But they could also do this ceremony on an as-needed basis if they had enough red heifers as it came along, or like you were alluding to, Yeshua fed 5,000 with 2 fish and 5 loaves, or 5 fish and 2 loaves, whatever it was, and so he can stretch things out as needed as well. So,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
right?
If you read the sages say that it was done miraculously. It lasted forever. It just kept
Always was
like the
so.
loaves of fishes and bread and all that stuff. It just keeps multiplying itself, and they've been using it all that time.
All right, and Mike.
Yeah, the ashes. Hello, testing. There it is. The ashes were stored in a container, and then they would take a little bit of the ashes and put in water. Okay, so I believe the number of red heifers from the time this was instituted till now, I think, is like less than 14. Somebody help me out here. Is it 9? Yeah, so it's only 9, and so the ashes of red heifer could be used for hundreds of thousands of people. They wouldn't just take the ashes from one heifer, pour it in some water. They would take a portion of the ashes, put it in the water, and so that's how I understand it.
Yeah, we've got a question back here, or a comment.
The way the way I understand it is the red heifer symbolizes Christ. And Christ was only sacrificed once, but yet his cleansing blood is efficacious for every human that's ever lived.
Yes, just like most of the things are shadows of what Yeshua has done for us. They're imperfect shadows that point to the perfection that comes through Yeshua, for sure. I think we've touched on some of the similarities on this already. I know John did. The one thing that he didn't mention, when the red heifer was being burned outside the camp, they added cedar to the fire as well for a sweet aroma. And just like Yeshua had the perfume added to him before he was sacrificed, before he was on the cross for his sweet aroma, that symbolizes that sacrifice would be acceptable to the Father, and that would be accepted, even though it was done outside the camp. And it was also talked about how this sacrifice was different. All the sacrifices in the sacrificial system that were done in the tabernacle, done on the altar, those were sacrifices. Those were things that we needed to do to get us right with the Father. But this sacrifice for the red heifer is kind of a set apart sacrifice. It's done in God's way to do the purification that only He can do. It talks about in verse 11. It touches on this all being about corpse impurity. It all being about death, and how death is the one thing that we cannot defeat. And all of this points to Yeshua defeating death for us. So this is him purifying us as a people, us as his people, from death, and showing us that he does have the power to conquer death by death. All right, do we have...
So I have a question or curiosity that they say he places things in the right or in certain places in Scripture, but notice he places the law, this heifer law, before the death of Miriam and Aaron, and so wonder why that is.
That's a good question, and I don't have an answer for that either. Does anyone else have any thoughts on that? It also talks about taking the red heifer to Eliezer instead of Aaron, so it's kind of a handing off of the mantle to Eliezer as the high priest now. Mike?
Well, a lot of things that were instituted on account of the tabernacle that Yahweh commanded Moses to build. That tabernacle, a lot of the ordinances and these rituals centered around that tabernacle and to make sure the tabernacle wasn't defiled, and so that's the reason for a lot of these things that were put in place. And since there is no temple today, those ordinances, laws cannot be honored unless there is one. Okay, so but it's very clear in the prophecies in Ezekiel and Isaiah that during the millennial kingdom, the dwelling place of God is going to be built. Mm-hmm. He said David's going to build it, and he says that Yahweh will build it. I'm sorry, and now who he uses to build it, it isn't real clear. I believe it's going to be David, King David, because he says that King David will be prince and will rule over his people in that time, in that millennial reign, and so anyway, so again, a lot of these rules and regulations and were put in place for the sake of keeping the dwelling place of God pure and not defiled.
Chad?
It's kind of hinted at, but the one thing that stands out the most to me is, like I think John was talking about, the parallels between the red heifer and Yeshua. And the overcoming theme in this chapter is, what the ashes did. Someone was unclean, it made them clean, and the person that was preparing the ashes became temporarily unclean. So that's what Yeshua did. We are unclean, he made us clean. Through that, he became temporarily unclean, but we know he's perfect. So it's a beautiful representation of what Yeshua has done for us.
I absolutely agree with that. And I think reading that, it gets confusing. How can what purifies everyone else make the one that handles it impure? But Yeshua took on the impurity for us, and and then he conquered death. All right, do we have any other comments on this? Checking my notes. I think I've gone through everything that I had written down, or a chunk of it anyway. I have a couple of thoughts. It could have been a red heifer, maybe to symbolize blood. Also, when they burned the red heifer outside the camp, there was a scarlet thread and hyssop that were put into the fire as well. Hyssop represents purification, like back in Egypt, spreading the blood on the doorways for protection. And the scarlet thread, it's like the scarlet thread that's wrapped around the scapegoat's neck in the Yom Kippur Day of Atonement sacrifices. Also, like the scarlet threads in the high priest's garments, scarlet threads in the veils of the Mishkan. So there's a lot of ties in there. All right. If we have no more thoughts on this, let's get a volunteer to Ray.
On that handling of the water was that Yeshua at the tomb said, "Don't touch me yet. I haven't ascended to my Father." So until the evening comes, until we die, where we've handled the water, we've asked Him to cleanse us, but until we die, we can't be glorified.
Yes, I agree. Can I get a volunteer to read chapter 20, please?
You'll have to forgive me if I mispronounce things. The people of Israel, the whole community, entered the Zin desert in the first month, and they stayed in Kadesh. There, Miriam died, and there she was buried. Because the community had no water, they assembled themselves against Moshe and Aaron. The people quarreled with Moshe and said, "We wish we had died when our brothers had died before Adonai. Why did you bring Adonai's community into this desert to die there, we and our livestock? Why did you make us leave Egypt to bring us to this terrible place without seed, figs, grapevines, pomegranates, or even water to drink?" Moshe and Aaron left the assembly, went to the entrance of the tent of meeting, and fell on their faces, and the glory of Adonai appeared to them. Adonai said to Moshe, "Take the staff, assemble the community, you and Aaron, your brother, and before their eyes tell the rock to produce its water. You will bring them water out of the rock, and thus enable the community and their livestock to drink." Moshe took the staff from the presence of Adonai, as he had ordered him. But after Moshe and Aaron had assembled the community in front of the rock, he said to them, "Listen here, you rebels. Are we supposed to bring you water from this rock?" Then Moshe raised his hand and hit the rock twice with his staff. Water flowed out in abundance, and the community and their livestock drank. But Adonai said to Moshe and Aaron, "Because you did not trust in me, so as to cause me to be regarded as holy by the people of Israel, you will not bring this community into the land I have given them." Thus said Meribah. Thus is Meribah spring. This. Where the people of Israel disputed with Adonai, and he was caused to be regarded as holy by them. Moshe sent messengers from Kadesh to the king of Edom. "This is what your brother Israel says. You know all the troubles we have gone through, that our ancestors went down into Egypt. We lived in Egypt a long time, and the Egyptians treated us and our ancestors badly. But when we cried out to Adonai, he heard us, sent an angel, and brought us out of Egypt. Now here in the Kadesh, a city at the edge of your territory, please let us pass through your land. We will not go through fields or vineyards, and we won't drink any water from the wells. We will go along the king's highway, not turning aside either to the right or to the left, until we have left your territory." But Edom answered, "You are not to pass through my land. If you do, I will come out against you with the sword." The people of Israel replied, "We will keep to the highway. If we do drink the water, either we or our livestock, we will pay for it. Just let us pass through on foot. It's nothing." But he said, "You are not to pass through." And Edom came out against them with many people and much force. Thus Edom refused to allow Israel passage through its territory. So Israel turned away. They traveled on from Kadesh, and the people of Israel, the whole community, arrived at Mount Hor. And at Mount Hor, by the border of the land of Edom, Adonai said to Moshe and Aaron, "Aaron is about to be gathered to his people, because he is not to enter the land I have given to the people of Israel, inasmuch as because he rebelled against what I said at the Meribah spring. Take Aaron and Eleazar his son, bring them up to Mount Hor. Remove the garments from Aaron and put them on Eleazar his son. Aaron will be gathered to his people. He will die there. Moshe did as Adonai had ordered. They went up onto Mount Hor before the eyes of the whole community. Moshe removed the garments from Aaron and put them on Eleazar his son, and Aaron died there on the top of the mountain. Then Moshe and Eleazar came down the mountain. When the entire community saw that Aaron was dead, they mourned Aaron 30 days, the whole house of Israel.
All right, thank you. One of the things that I found interesting in this reading, it starts off with the death of Miriam and ends with the death of Aaron. And a few chapters later, we're going to read about the death of Moses. For the deaths of Moses and Aaron, we read about the children of Israel mourning their deaths for a number of days, for a great time. But we don't have any mention of mourning for Miriam. I don't have an answer for that. I just thought that was interesting. Do we have any comments on this section? John?
I've been to this area of Israel in 1982, and this is very barren area. It is nothing, hardly anything grows at all. Just sometimes you'll see living things in the valleys between hills, and that's all. It's just dust and rock. The sin of Moses was anger was a problem in his life. Remember that the beginning of Exodus, that Moses became angry about the Egyptian who was mistreating an Israelite, and he struck him and killed him in one blow. It sounds like that's enough.
Do we have any other comments? Yeah, Stevie?
I don't know either. Nevertheless, there is some speculation that we could consider, and that's that Miriam controlled the rock, or the rock was with her, and therefore she dispensed the water. Many times, people who serve behind the scenes are not acknowledged or recognized for what they do, no matter how great it may be. And so we have Moshe and Aaron mourned by the whole nation. Yet, nevertheless, there is, in a sense, God recognized, even though the people did not acknowledge it, he knew her service. And all of the women knew as well. And so, even today, in many societies where the woman, the wives of men, are responsible for bringing water to the household. And I think this fits in really well with even the Hebrew for as well in their traditions and in Scripture. So we see that there's something here that's happening, that the water, God is acknowledging Miriam because the water's gone. And they recognize how desperately they need the water. They've been receiving manna, so they've had food subsistence, but to die of thirst. And they're also concerned about their animals as well. And so the water is desperately needed here. And so we see this where God, they complain to Moshe. And this Moshe probably is also grieving along with Aaron the loss of their sister, and he's at the end of his rope, so to speak. This is I can't defend him or acknowledge this, but I know that obviously he's been under a great deal of stress for at least 40 years here. And nevertheless, it comes and it's like, oh, we've been here before. So he kind of loses it here, right? But I think the point here is that we should try to acknowledge those who serve us, no matter how humble that may be, and recognize their service to God. And it may be much more important than we imagine.
For sure. And I think as we go through the Torah, things aren't necessarily in a chronological order. And I'm not saying that's for sure the case here, but we've kind of in the space of a couple chapters skipped 37 years of time here all of a sudden. And it could fit very well that Miriam died, Aaron and Moses were mourning that, and all of a sudden the people are asking, what happens when the high priest has touched a corpse and is impure now? What do we do? And then that brings us into the last chapter that we read. So there's some potential for that for sure. Just a cursory reading of this chapter, my first thought was, have the children of Israel learned nothing in the last 40 years? Here they have no water, and it's been supplied for them by the Father, and they complain as soon as it runs out. And for the first time for me, reading into some of the Jewish sages as I was preparing for this, I read that they believe that, like what you were saying, when the water came from the rock, Miriam was in charge of that, and they took the rock with them, and water kept coming out of the rock, and the rock followed them everywhere they traveled throughout that 40 years. That's in the Midrash that the sages teach about that, and that the water quit flowing when Miriam died. So when she's gone, there's no water, everyone's grieving, and then like you were saying, they're under a lot of stress. They need water, their animals need water, and they kind of all forget everything that they've learned. Any other comments? Paul kind of alludes to the fact that the rock followed them around as well. I've gotten my notes here that in 1 Corinthians 10, Paul writes, "For I do not want you to be unaware, brethren, that our fathers were all under the cloud, and all passed through the sea, and were all baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea, and all ate the same spiritual food, and all drank the same spiritual drink, for they were drinking from a spiritual rock which followed them, and that rock was Messiah." Dean?
You actually stole my thought. I actually had already turned there. And I was like, yeah.
My bad.
Also, the first time he said, strike the rock, I will stand before you, and you shall strike the rock. Messiah only needs to be struck once. And then he says, speak to the rock. He'd already been struck. He's not going to be crucified again, right? So I think it's a lesson to understand that we pray, we ask, we speak these things based upon what's already been done. So that's my thought.
Back here. Michael, how much time do we have left? Okay.
Just to go along with the last two comments there, in our own lives, in our trials, we should speak to the rock, speak to Yeshua.
Absolutely. If we've got no more comments on this, can I get a volunteer to read chapter 21, please?
When the Canaanite, the king of Arad, who lived in the Negeb, heard that Israel was coming by the way of Athirim, he fought against Israel and took some of them captive. And Israel vowed a vow to the Lord and said, "If you will indeed give this people into my hand, then I will devote their cities to destruction." And the Lord heeded the voice of Israel and gave over the Canaanites, and they devoted them and their cities to destruction. So the name of the place was called Hormah. From Mount Hor they set out by the way to the Red Sea to go around the land of Edom. And the people became impatient on the way. And the people spoke against God and against Moses. "Why have you brought us up out of Egypt to die in this wilderness? For there is no food and no water, and we loathe this worthless food." Then the Lord sent fiery serpents among the people, and they bit the people, so that many people of Israel died. And the people came to Moses and said, "We have sinned, for we have spoken against the Lord and against you. Pray to the Lord that he take away the serpents from us." So Moses prayed for the people, and the Lord said to Moses, "Make a fiery serpent and set it on a pole, and everyone who is bitten, when he sees it, shall live." So Moses made a bronze serpent and set it on a pole. And if a serpent bit anyone, he would look at the bronze serpent and live. And the people of Israel set out and camped in Oboth. And they set out from Oboth and camped at Abiram in the wilderness that is opposite Moab, toward the sunrise. From there they set out and camped in the valley of Zered. From there they set out and camped on the other side of the Arnon, which is in the wilderness that extends from the border of the Amorites. For the Arnon is the border of Moab, between Moab and the Amorites. Therefore it is said in the book of the wars of the Lord, Waheb and Suphah and the valleys of the Arnon, and the slope of the valleys that extends to the sea of Ar, and leans to the border of Moab. And from there they continued to Be'er. That is the well of which the Lord said to Moses, "Gather the people together so that I may give them water." Then Israel sang this song, "Spring up, O well, sing to it, the well that the princes made, that the nobles of the people dug, with the scepter and with their staffs." And from the wilderness they went on to Matana, and from Matana to Nahaliel, and from Nahaliel to Bamoth, from Bamoth to the valley lying in the region of Moab, by the top of Pisgah that looks down on the desert. Then Israel sent messengers to Sihon, king of the Amorites, saying, "Let me pass through your land. We will not turn aside into field or vineyard. We will not drink the water of a well. We will go by the king's highway until we have passed through your territory." But Sihon would not allow Israel to pass through his territory. He gathered all his people together and went out against Israel to the wilderness and came to Yahaz and fought against Israel. And Israel defeated him with the edge of the sword and took possession of his land from the Arnon to the Jabbok, as far as the Ammonites, for the border of the Ammonites was strong. And Israel took all these cities, and Israel settled in all the cities of the Amorites in Heshbon, and in all its villages. For Heshbon was the city of Sihon, the king of the Amorites, who had fought against the former king of Moab, and taken all his land out of his hand, as far as the Arnon. Therefore the ballad singers say, "Come to Heshbon, let it be built. Let the city of Sihon be established. For fire came out from Heshbon, flame from the city of Sihon. It devoured Ar of Moab and swallowed the heights of the Arnon. Woe to you, O Moab! You are undone, O people of Hamash. He has made his sons fugitives and his daughters captives to an Amorite king, Sihon. So we overthrew them. Heshbon, as far as Dibon, perished, and we laid waste as far as Naphah. Fire spread as far as Medeba. Thus Israel lived in the land of the Amorites, and Moses sent to spy out Yazer, and they captured its villages and dispossessed the Amorites who were there. Then they turned and went up by the way to Bashan, and Og, the king of Bashan, came out against them, he and all his people, to battle at Edrei. But the Lord said to Moses, "Do not fear him, for I have given him into your hand, and all his people and his land. And you shall do to him as you did to Sihon, king of the Amorites, who lived at Heshbon." So they defeated him and his sons and all his people until he had no survivor left, and they possessed his land.
All right, thank you. Do we have any comments on this section? John?
This wilderness of Edom and Moab is also desert. The Israelites wanted to travel on what's called the King's Highway, which was the common travel from south to north or north to south. But those two nations would not permit them. Since both Edom and Moab are related to Israel, they could not attack them. So they traveled to the east of the King's Highway to go north. The Arnon, Arnon, that's mentioned is a river that flows over about 20 miles. It descends to the Dead Sea in 3,700 feet. So it's extremely deep and vast. The Arnon at the east end, though, curves to the right on the map, south. The curvature means that Israel bypassed the gorge of the Arnon and did cross north through level ground east of that curving Arnon headwater. So the other similarity is when the snakes were biting Israel, the snake shape that was put on a pole in John chapter 3, verse 13 or 14 and 15 is used as a similarity. Jesus says that just as the snake was lifted up, so Christ, he said he would be lifted up on the cross. Lifting up, in his case, was the crucifixion. So obviously Christ already knew, probably even before he was sent to die by the Father, that he would be crucified.
All right, thank you, John. I'm getting the timeout signal, so just a quick thought, and then we'll go ahead and close with the blessing. We'll read in the very next verse that the children of Israel, the next thing they do is they camp by the Jordan River overlooking Jericho, and I think it's reaffirming that we ended this chapter that we just read with a list of victories for the children of Israel, because they definitely had their struggles going through the desert, but the Father points out that they end on a high note through their journey. They are victorious because they trust in the Father. Let's go ahead and bow our heads and close with a blessing. Blessed are you, Jehovah our God, King of the universe, who has given us a Torah of truth, implanting within us eternal life. Blessed are you, Jehovah our God, who gives the Torah. Amen.